Every street tells a story, but some stories stay hidden. Hip-hop legends, mobster tales, political secrets, they're all here, waiting in the shadows. This is where the real stories live. Welcome to the Crime Shop.
The street has its own set of rules. It's a battlefield just like any other. The difference is, there are no uniforms, no flags, just cold, hard ambition. For some men, the transition from one battlefield to another is seamless. They trade their army fatigues for a sharp suit, their service rifle for a hidden piece. The discipline, the training, the ability to follow orders without question. These are skills that are highly valued in two very different worlds, the United States military and the American Mafia. It's a dark crossover, where the honor of serving your country gets twisted into the loyalty of serving a crime family. This is not a story about heroes. It's about what happens when the skills meant to protect and serve are turned inward, used to build empires of fear and violence on American soil. These men were forged in the crucible of war. They saw action in places like Vietnam, Korea, and World War II. They learned how to survive, how to fight, and how to kill. They were taught to be part of a unit, to have unwavering loyalty to their brothers in arms, and to execute a mission with precision. But when they came home, the world they fought for sometimes felt alien. The structure was gone. The adrenaline was gone. For a select few, the criminal underworld offered a familiar hierarchy and a twisted sense of purpose. The skills that made them exceptional soldiers also made them terrifyingly effective criminals, capable of carrying out orders with a chilling detachment that set them apart from the average street hood. The connection between military service and organized crime is a shadow history, one that isn't often discussed, yet it's there, woven into the fabric of some of the most notorious crime families in the nation. It's a story of loyalty, betrayal, and the psychological toll of violence. How does a man who pledged to defend his country end up enforcing the brutal will of a crime boss? What happens in the mind of a soldier when the enemy is no longer a foreign army, but a rival family or a government witness? These are the questions that hang over the lives of these complex figures, men who lived by a code, first for their country and then for their family. This essay explores that dark journey. We'll look at the lives of men who walked this path, from their days in uniform to their rise through the ranks of the mob. We will examine how their military training gave them a distinct advantage in a world where violence is a tool and fear is a currency. It's a deep dive into the psychology of a soldier turned mobster, an exploration of how the very traits that make a good warrior can also create a formidable monster. The discipline, the precision, the cold resolve, these were their greatest assets on both sides of the law. This is the untold story of when the battlefield came home and the war never really ended. To understand this phenomenon, you have to look at the men themselves. They weren't just names in a newspaper headline or characters in a movie. They were real people who made a choice. Take Frank the Irishman Sheeran. He was a rifleman in the US Army, serving an incredible 411 days of combat duty during World War II. He fought in some of the war's toughest campaigns, from the invasion of Italy to the battles in France and Germany. He saw things, did things, that would change a man forever. The army taught him not just how to fight, but how to survive in the harshest conditions, and how to follow orders from a chain of command without blinking. Those lessons would serve him well long after he took off the uniform. Then there's Sammy the Bull Gravano, a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone who knows the history of the Gambino crime family. Before he was a feared underboss, Gravano was a soldier in the US Army, serving a stint in the late 1960s. While he wasn't a decorated war hero like Sheeran, his time in the military gave him a taste of structure and discipline that he craved. He learned about hierarchy and the importance of being part of a powerful organization. He was even, by some accounts, a cook. But the military environment itself, with its rigid rules and clear lines of authority, left a permanent mark on him, shaping the man who would later enforce John Gotti's brutal reign. We also have Dominick Montiglio, a key figure in the Demio crew, one of the most violent gangs in Mafia history. Montiglio was a Green Beret who served 2 tours in Vietnam. The Green Berets are the elite, the best of the best, trained in unconventional warfare, demolitions, and intelligence gathering. Montiglio came home with a skill set straight out of a spy thriller, skills that were highly sought after by his uncle, Nino Gaggi, a powerful capo in the Gambino family. His training made him more than just a tough guy. It made him a strategic asset, somebody who could plan and execute complex operations with military precision. Finally, we see this pattern extend into the modern era with figures like Joseph Rambo Hunter. A former U.S. Army sergeant and decorated sniper instructor, Hunter's story is a chilling evolution of this trend. He wasn't part of the traditional Italian mafia, but he used his elite military background to build a global network of contract killers, many of them ex-soldiers like himself. His case shows that this pipeline from soldier to criminal isn't just a relic of the past, it's a modern-day reality. These men, Sheeran, Gravano, Montiglio, Hunter, and others like Frank Salem, a former U.S. Army paratrooper, all shared a common starting point, a U.S. military uniform. Their stories diverge, but the foundation is the same. What exactly did the military give these men that made them so successful in the criminal underworld? It wasn't just about knowing how to handle a weapon, though that was certainly part of it. It was about a mindset, a way of thinking and operating that was perfectly suited for a life of organized crime. First and foremost was the concept of discipline and hierarchy. The military drills into you the importance of a chain of command. You follow orders from your superiors without question, whether you agree with them or not. In the Mafia, the structure is identical. You have soldiers, capos, an underboss, and a boss. A soldier who already understands this system fits in seamlessly. He doesn't question the boss's orders. He just carries them out. This discipline extended to every aspect of their criminal work. When a hit was ordered, a soldier-turned-mobster approached it like a military mission. They were meticulous planners. They conducted surveillance, studied their targets' routines, and planned their entry and exit routes down to the last detail. This wasn't the sloppy, impulsive violence of a common street thug. This was calculated and precise. Men like Dominick Montiglio, with his Green Beret training, could orchestrate complex criminal enterprises with the same efficiency as a special forces operation. Their ability to remain calm under extreme pressure, a skill honed in combat, made them reliable and deadly effective in high-stakes situations where others would panic. Another critical skill was the desensitization to violence. Soldiers, especially those in combat roles like Frank Sheeran, are trained to see killing as a necessary part of the job. It's a switch you learn to flip. You depersonalize the target. It's not a person, it's an objective. This psychological conditioning is invaluable for a mafia hitman. While others might hesitate or be haunted by their actions, these men could carry out an execution with a cold professional detachment. Frank Sheeran famously described his work as painting houses, a chilling euphemism for the blood splatter left behind. This wasn't sadism. It was the dispassionate completion of a task, a trait learned on the battlefields of Europe. Finally, there was the element of loyalty and brotherhood. In the military, you develop an intense bond with the men in your unit. You trust them with your life, and they trust you with theirs. This creates a powerful sense of belonging and an unbreakable code of silence. The Mafia operates on a similar principle, omertà, the code of silence. For a former soldier, this concept was already second nature. The family became their new unit, the boss, their new commanding officer. This loyalty, forged in military tradition, made them trustworthy and dependable members of the organization, at least until that loyalty was tested by something stronger, like self-preservation or a government subpoena. Frank Sheeran's story is a classic example of this dark transition. After his extensive combat service in World War II, he came back to America a changed man. He drove trucks for a living, a simple job, but the streets of Philadelphia had other plans for him. He met Russell Bufalino, the quiet, powerful boss of the Bufalino crime family. Bufalino saw something in Sheeran, a man who was not intimidated, who understood orders, and who had a certain stillness that spoke of a capacity for violence. Sheeran's military experience was his resume. He had survived some of the most brutal fighting of the war, and that meant he wouldn't break under pressure. He was exactly what the mob was looking for. Sheeran's rise was built on his reliability. He started out doing small favors, collections, and muscle work. But his true value was as a hitman. He claimed to have carried out more than 24 contract killings for the mob. His approach was professional, almost businesslike. As he famously said, "I heard you paint houses," was the first thing mob-connected Teamsters boss Jimmy Hoffa said to him. The paint was blood. The houses were the bodies. His wartime experience had taught him how to kill efficiently and without emotion. He knew how to handle firearms, how to be patient, and how to make a problem disappear permanently. These were not skills you learn on the street corner. They were skills he perfected under the command of the U.S. Army. His most famous and controversial association was with Jimmy Hoffa, the powerful and charismatic leader of the Teamsters Union. Sheeran became Hoffa's right-hand man, his bodyguard, and his muscle. He was intensely loyal to Hoffa, but he was also loyal to Russell Bufalino, the man who brought him into this life. This created a terrible conflict. When the mob decided that Hoffa had become a liability, the order allegedly came down to Sheeran himself. The man who had been Hoffa's closest friend was tasked with his execution. It was the ultimate test of a soldier's loyalty. An order from his commanding officer, Bufalino, to eliminate a friend. According to Sheeran's own confession, he carried out the order. He drove with Hoffa to a house in Detroit, where the union boss expected a meeting. Instead, Sheeran claimed he shot his friend twice in the back of the head. It was a cold, efficient act, the culmination of a life where loyalty to the organization trumped all personal feelings. Whether his confession is entirely true is still debated by historians, but his life story perfectly illustrates the model of the soldier mobster. He was a man who followed orders, who did his job with a chilling professionalism, and whose military past provided the perfect training for a lifetime of crime. His downfall wasn't a dramatic shootout, but the slow decay of old age, and a conscience that finally needed to speak. Sammy the Bull Gravano was a different breed of soldier and a different breed of gangster. Unlike Sheeran, who was a product of World War II's grit, Gravano came of age during the Vietnam era. He joined the army and, found a sense of belonging that had always kind of eluded him on the streets of Brooklyn. He learned discipline, and more importantly, he learned how an organization with power and structure really operates. While his military career wasn't as distinguished as others, the experience, it solidified his desire to be part of something formidable. When he returned to civilian life, he found that something in the Colombo crime family, and later, the Gambino family. He was, honestly, a natural fit. Gravano quickly earned a reputation for being tough, smart, and utterly fearless. His nickname, the Bull, came from his physical presence and his willingness to confront anyone. But it was his cunning and business sense that truly set him apart. He rose through the ranks, building a massive and lucrative construction empire that he controlled through intimidation and bid rigging. He was a moneymaker, but he never forgot the core of the business: violence. He was personally involved in 19 murders, crimes he planned and executed with a disturbing level of calm and efficiency. He approached a hit with the mindset of a mission, focusing on the objective and eliminating any emotional distractions. His military background, though brief, really instilled in him an understanding of strategy and tactics. He wasn't just a brute, he was a thinker. This is what caught the eye of the ambitious and flamboyant John Gotti. When Gotti planned his takeover of the Gambino family by assassinating the boss, Paul Castellano, he turned to Gravano to be his key strategist and enforcer. Gravano orchestrated the hit with military precision. He selected the team, scouted the location outside Sparks Steakhouse, and controlled the operation from a car across the street. The hit was a flawless success, and it catapulted Gotti to the top of the Mafia world, with Gravano as his loyal underboss. For years, Gravano was Gotti's most trusted confidant. He was the enforcer, the strategist, and the rock of the administration. But the loyalty that defined his career, it had its limits. When the FBI presented Gravano with tapes of Gotti speaking disrespectfully about him and implicating him in numerous crimes, Gravano felt betrayed. The Brotherhood was broken. Facing a life sentence, he made a decision that would shatter the Mafia's code of silence. He chose self-preservation over omerta. The soldier's loyalty was replaced by a survivor's instinct. He became a government witness, and his testimony brought down John Gotti and dozens of other high-ranking mobsters, effectively ending the reign of the Teflon Don. The stories of Dominick Montiglio and Frank Cadillac. Frank Salem add another layer to this dark tapestry. They represent the intersection of elite military training and old-school mob brutality. Montiglio was not just any soldier. He was a Green Beret. He served in Vietnam, the epicenter of unconventional warfare. He came home with a set of skills that made him uniquely dangerous in the criminal underworld. He knew about explosives, counter-surveillance, and guerrilla tactics. When he joined his uncle Nino Gaggi's crew, the infamous DeMeo crew, he wasn't just another earner, he was a weapon, a specialist who brought a new level of sophistication to their violent enterprise. The DeMeo crew was known for its sheer brutality and the staggering number of murders it committed. Montiglio was the central figure in their operations. His military training made him invaluable. He was disciplined, methodical, and understood how to operate as part of a small, lethal team. He participated in the crew's grim business, from car theft rings to contract killings. But his specialized skills were often called upon for more complex tasks. He was the one who could think strategically, who could anticipate law enforcement tactics, and who could maintain composure in the most chaotic situations. He was a professional operating in an organization of thugs, and that professionalism made him both respected and feared. On a parallel track was Frank Salem, a figure who would one day become the boss of the Patriarca crime family in New England. Salem's military background was with the U.S. Army paratroopers. This training instilled in him a sense of toughness and fearlessness that defined his long and bloody career in the mob. Paratroopers are taught to jump into hostile territory, to operate with courage and aggression. Salem brought that same mentality to the streets of Boston. He was known as a formidable enforcer, a man who survived assassination attempts and spent years in prison without ever breaking the code of silence. His military-honed resilience made him a legend in the underworld. Like the others, however, their reigns were destined to end. For Montiglio, the turning point came when he realized his own crew, under the direction of the psychopathic Roy DeMeo, was likely to kill him. Facing imminent death from his own side and a long prison sentence from the government, he made the same choice as Gravano. He flipped. He became a witness, and his testimony helped dismantle the DeMeo crew, exposing their horrific crimes. Salem's fall was more gradual. After rising to become boss, he was eventually indicted on racketeering charges and, years later, for the murder of a nightclub owner. He too eventually entered the Witness Protection Program, the final, ignominious end for a man who once commanded an army of criminals. The pipeline from military to crime didn't end with the old-school mafia. It evolved, becoming more global and more corporate, as demonstrated by the chilling case of Joseph Rambo Hunter. Hunter was not a mobster in the traditional sense. He wasn't part of an Italian-American crime family. He was a new kind of criminal, a product of the post-9/11 military. He was a former U.S. Army sergeant, a sniper instructor, and a senior drill sergeant. He had a decorated 20-year career, earning commendations for his service. He was the model soldier, respected for his skills, his discipline, and his ability to train others to be elite warriors. When he left the military, Hunter found that his highly specialized skills were in demand on the private market. But he didn't go into legitimate security work. Instead, he became a mercenary, a soldier for hire. He used his contacts from his time in the service to recruit a team of other former Special Forces soldiers from various countries: the United States, Germany, Poland. They were all highly trained, disciplined operatives who found themselves adrift in the civilian world. Hunter offered them what the military once did: high-stakes missions, a clear chain of command, and a sense of brotherhood, all for a hefty price. Hunter and his team became a private army for drug cartels and other international criminal organizations. They provided security for drug shipments, gathered intelligence, and, most disturbingly, carried out contract killings. Their operations were sophisticated and professional. In one case, they were hired by an undercover DEA agent posing as a cartel member to assassinate another DEA agent and an informant. Hunter and his men planned the hit with chilling detail, discussing weapons, surveillance, and even the use of gruesome face masks to disguise themselves. Their military precision was on full display, but it was in service of pure evil. Hunter's downfall came because of that very DEA sting operation. He and his men were arrested in Thailand in 2013 and extradited to the United States. During his trial, the prosecution laid bare his transformation from an American hero to a global mercenary leader. He was recorded boasting about his team's capabilities, saying he could hire men who could do any job. Hunter's story is a terrifying update on the soldier-to-criminal narrative. It shows how the same skills that once served a nation can be repackaged and sold to the highest bidder, creating a new generation of hyper-competent criminals who operate without borders and without allegiance to anything but money. He was sentenced to life in prison, a modern warrior undone by the very system he once swore to protect. No matter how disciplined, how ruthless, or how well-trained these men were, their careers in crime almost always ended in one of three ways: a prison cell, a shallow grave, or betrayal. The very organization they pledged their loyalty to often became the source of their destruction. The Mafia, for all its talk of honor and family, is a world built on paranoia and self-interest. Loyalty only lasts as long as you are useful. When you become a liability, or when someone more ambitious wants your spot, the code of honor evaporates. A soldier's training can't protect you from a knife in the back from your own side. For many, the end came at the hands of the law. The United States government, particularly the FBI, spent decades developing strategies to dismantle organized crime. They used wiretaps, surveillance, and, most effectively, the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. This powerful law allowed prosecutors to target entire criminal enterprises, not just individual crimes. Men like Frank Salem, who had dodged justice for years, were eventually caught in the RICO net. The evidence became overwhelming, and the prospect of dying in prison became a stark reality. The discipline they learned in the military was no match for the relentless, systematic pressure of federal law enforcement. This pressure led to the ultimate sin in the Mafia world: becoming a government witness. When faced with a life sentence, the instinct for self-preservation often took over. Sammy Gravano and Dominick Montiglio are prime examples. They saw the walls closing in, and they realized their family would not protect them. In Gravano's case, he heard his own boss, John Gotti, on tape making incriminating statements that put him at risk. The brotherhood was a lie. So, he made a calculated decision. He used his knowledge, the secrets he had protected for years, as a bargaining chip. He betrayed the code to save himself. A final, cynical act from a man whose life was built on a twisted form of loyalty. Even for those who didn't cooperate, the end was bleak. Frank Sheeran lived into old age, but he was haunted by his past, ultimately confessing his life of crime to a biographer. Joseph Hunter, the modern mercenary, was caught in a sophisticated sting. His military confidence leading him into a trap set by agents who were just as patient and methodical as he was. The lesson is clear. A life of crime is a dead-end street. The skills forged in the military might bring temporary success, power, and wealth in the underworld, but the foundation is unstable. The very violence and paranoia that fuels a criminal empire ensures that it will eventually collapse upon itself. Justice, in one form or another, is always waiting. When you look back at the lives of these men, you see a tragic and twisted narrative. They were individuals who possessed admirable qualities: discipline, courage, loyalty, and the ability to perform under immense pressure. In a different context, these are the traits of a hero. They were honed and perfected by the United States military, an institution designed to create protectors and defenders of a nation. Yet, these same traits became the tools of their corruption. The discipline to follow orders became the willingness to commit murder. The loyalty to a unit became a deadly allegiance to a crime boss. The courage to face an enemy became the cold nerve to extinguish a life for profit. This is the double-edged sword of military training. It forges a powerful weapon, but it doesn't always control the hand that wields it. When these soldiers returned to a civilian world that felt unstructured and devoid of the camaraderie and adrenaline they had grown accustomed to, the criminal underworld offered a seductive alternative. It provided a clear hierarchy, a sense of belonging, and a mission. It was a dark reflection of the military structure they had left behind. The skills were transferable, but the morality was inverted. They went from serving a country to serving a syndicate, using their government-funded training to undermine the very society they once swore to protect. Their legacy is a complex one. On one hand, they are a testament to the effectiveness of military training. They prove that the skills taught in the armed forces create exceptionally capable and resilient individuals. On the other hand, their stories serve as a cautionary tale about the psychological transition from soldier to civilian. It highlights a dark potential that exists when structure is removed and a moral compass is lost. These men were not monsters born, but men made, shaped by both the battlefields of foreign wars and the concrete jungles of American cities. Their choices led them down a path of violence and destruction, forever staining the honor associated with their service. Ultimately, the stories of men like Sheeran, Gravano, and Hunter are a sober reminder of the thin line between order and chaos, between a soldier and a killer. They lived by a code, a twisted version of the honor they learned in uniform. Their lives were a testament to the fact that discipline without a moral purpose is a dangerous force. They were effective, they were successful, and they were feared. But in the end, their empires crumbled, their loyalties shattered, and their legacies were reduced to cautionary tales whispered in courtrooms and chronicled in police files. They were soldiers who fought their final war on the wrong side of the law, and it was a war that nobody, least of all them, could ever truly win.
If you want to know more about the true stories behind New York's most notorious gangs, hit that subscribe button, because in the world of true crime, the truth is never simple, and it's never safe.